Well, comrades, the title of this afternoon's session is Building a Mass Socialist Party. And of course, we in this room are not going to do that on our own. Take that for granted. And it's not really going to be a blueprint for how we build a mass socialist party. But it's really trying to set out some of the arguments that we come across amongst our comrades on the Marxist left, amongst the socialist movement generally, about what we ought to be doing as Marxists, what we ought to be doing as socialists, what's our role, how do we approach the question of society and its government, and what do we need to construct or do in order to engage with the problems that our class, the working class, faces. Well, the Independent Socialist Network brings together people from different traditions and backgrounds. I think around the table we're all Marxists, and we come from different organisations, and we're now not in anything apart from the ISN. But we want to build or participate with others in building a mass socialist party. That's one of our raison d'etre. That's what we're about. As I mentioned at the conference last Saturday, or was it the Saturday before, at the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition, our bulletin that we put out is called Socialism and Unity. And I suppose that in one way sums up what we're about. We're fighting for socialism, and we want unity of socialists to prosecute that idea. We just had a very, very interesting discussion this morning about Syriza, and in the course of that we touched on the rise of Podemos in Spain, and we mentioned Die Linke in Germany, and there are other parties of the left that have sprung up in other European countries. And of course here in Britain there have been many different organisations that have attempted to take this step, going back to the Socialist Labour Party, the Socialist Alliance, Respect, I would suggest fits into that general approach. More recently there is the Trade Unionist Socialist Coalition and Left Unity. And I think people around the table have pretty much been involved in all, or most, certainly some of those different projects, because we recognise that the Labour Party is not the vehicle by which the working class is going to change society, or with which the working class is going to change society. The Labour Party is not going to be the instrument by which capitalism is overthrown, that capitalism is ended. And we recognise that if our class, the working class, is going to get rid of capitalism, it needs an instrument to do that. We would say that it has to have a party. And the party that we have to have, I would argue, has to be three things, I might add. Four, fifth, I don't know. Three things. First of all, it has to be a party that is a socialist party. It seems to be little purpose to me for socialists, for Marxists, to be building a party that does not have the objective of achieving socialism. I mean, what is the point of that? I just cannot reliably get my head around that. So our aim is to get a party that is committed to socialism. So the aim of the party, the ultimate objective of the party that we want, the ultimate goal, is socialism. And by that, again, just in terms of definitions, by that I mean the ideas of communism as articulated by Marx and Engels and by others that followed. So in a sense I use the words socialism and communism interchangeably. Others might make a difference or draw a distinction. Really I don't. So our ultimate goal is a society in which capitalist class oppression has been ended, in which the exploitation of the working class has ended, and in which oppression, gender differentiation, racism, imperialism, all the things that we fight against, they've all ended. That we have a society in which there's no state. We have a society in which the resources, the wealth of society, is owned in common and managed democratically by society at large. Our argument as Marxists is for that to be achieved, first of all, the working class has to get rid of the capitalist system. It has to get rid of the private ownership of the means of production. It has to bring about a rule by the working class. And that achievement has to be an act of the working class itself. So the act of changing society, that revolutionary act, that transformative act by the working class, is, in a sense, the most democratic act ever in history. Because it's the majority class in society acting in its own interests to change society for the benefit of all humanity now and in the future. So the first thing then is the party needs to be socialist. It needs to understand what it's about. It needs to have an objective. And it needs to try to inspire millions and millions of people about that objective. What could be more inspiring than getting rid of poverty, than getting rid of oppression, than getting rid of the exploitation of the vast billions on the planet? It's a goal that could mobilise millions of people, and it's one that we shouldn't shy away from. The second thing that I would say about the party is that it has to be democratic. It has to be completely democratic. And that touches on some of the debates that we're having at the moment within Left Unity, and perhaps more particularly inside the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition. What sort of party should it be in terms of its democracy? And party constitutions can be all sorts and still be generally democratic. But I would argue that first and foremost it has to have a membership. It has to have a membership which has rights to speak, to debate, to differ, to disagree, and to argue for their own ideas within the broad approach of what I've just set out at the beginning of this talk. The third point that I would say the party has to be, and this is obviously not for now, but this is our aim, is that it has to be a mass party. We cannot achieve what I was saying as the first condition, the achievement of socialism. We cannot achieve the socialist transformation of society without a party that comprises of, in my opinion, millions of people. Not small revolutionary parties acting in their own name, in their own interests, and so on, but a mass party. Because if the act of changing society is the act of the working class, that can't be achieved by an individual, it can't be achieved by an army, it can't be achieved by a generalissimo, it can't be achieved by a small party, however good the Marxist ideas of that small party might be. And therefore, socialists that want to set about constructing a new party have to have patience. They have to have a strategy. They have to have a long view of history. Because I believe that the construction of a mass socialist party will take quite some time. Sometimes it might be quite slow, and other times, because of the events in society, the ability to build that party will speed up. There'll be events which will pose questions, pose issues that people will want answers to, and if that party is capable of giving those answers to those questions, then it will draw larger numbers of people to it, and it will be a process of patience, of slow accumulation, of rapid accumulation, and so on. By intervening in all of the struggles of the working class. That's in the workplace, that's in the community, that's in the colleges, in the schools, in the pensioners' community, and so on, taking up the issues. Now, some people think that by arguing for this party that sets its goal as being transformative, of ending capitalism, that somehow that means that that's all you're interested in. That you're just about some airy-fairy, pie-in-the-sky, never-to-be-achieved socialist transformation, and you're not really dealing with the here and now. You're not confronting the issues now. But nothing could be further from the truth. If we want to build the party, the sort of party that I'm talking about, we have to involve ourselves in all of the struggles of our class, all of the struggles of the youth, all of the struggles of the oppressed minorities, all of the struggles against sexism, against racism, and so on, all of the struggles to defend the immigrant and the minority communities, here and now. And we have to fight for advances in their conditions, in their standard of living, in their democratic rights, and we participate as socialists in those struggles to win concessions if we can, to stop attacks which make our situation worse if we can, but hopefully always trying to draw together, if possible, the link between the attacks that we're facing now with capitalism, and that overall, if we're going to end the constant, repetitive, persistent attacks on our class, the only way to do that is to actually end the system that drives those attacks. So at the moment, the calling card for most on the left, and I will include myself in this, is that we are against austerity. We want to fight against austerity. Our class has been battered from pillar to post by austerity. And all of the major parties in Britain, and for that matter elsewhere in the world, are all signed up to the austerity agenda. That means cutting wages, if they can get away with it. It means increasing the working day, if they can achieve that. It means eroding benefits, if they can get away with it. It means privatising. It means outsourcing. It means zero-hour contracts. It means cutting central government spending on social welfare, on other aspects of our life, things that make our lives tolerable, like the health service, like libraries, like sports centres for young people. So austerity attacks all of those. We as Marxists have a duty to explain that this just does not come out of nowhere. It doesn't come out of the blue, and it's not simply a matter of an ideological attack by some people that are mean-spirited. I'm sure they are mean-spirited by and large, but that's not what makes them do it. What makes them carry out these attacks is the nature of capitalism, and particularly the nature of late capitalism, capitalism now. That capitalism now is not producing, generally speaking, the same profits, the same rate of profit as it did in previous eras. We are returning, in a sense, to a more normal capitalism that existed before the Second World War. Capitalism raw in tooth and claw. And the attacks are driven by the crisis in capitalism itself, and they're not going to go away. Now, through strong organisation, through successful organisation, mobilising large numbers of people, our class can achieve temporary respite from time to time in the face of some of these attacks. We can push the ruling capitalist class back. Although, if you look at Britain in the last 30 years, there have been very few occasions where we've achieved that. The poll tax strike stands out as one of the biggest achievements, biggest examples. But in recent years, you're hard pressed to find examples of, for example, successful resistance or prevention of the privatisation of some aspect of public spending, or public services rather, for example. So we might, from time to time, achieve a reprieve. But if we do, even if we do, then that reprieve can only be temporary, because the capitalist class will have to keep coming back and attacking our class, because we have to pay for their crisis. Our class is the sole generator of the surplus that makes their profit. So why do we tolerate, why do we accept the perpetuation of a system in which we work and they benefit? And when I say we, I'm talking about the overwhelming majority of people in the world, 6.6 billion population of the world. 6.5 and a half of those will be toilers, or people that should be toiling or have to toil to make ends meet. The very, very few are the people who own the means of production, who make the profit, who benefit from it. It should, if you think about it in terms of those numbers, be a simple matter of actually turning the world upside down. Of course, it's not quite that simple. So, here in Britain, how do we go from now, where the Marxist left is disunited, it's separate, it's divided, to a party of millions, of many millions, capable of influencing, inspiring and mobilising millions more? Well, I think first of all we have to argue for unity. We have to argue for a party in which Marxists with different ideas can all exist side by side and thrash out their differences, their disagreements in comradely debate. It is ridiculous, frankly, that Marxists are separated into different groups, some big, some small, when we have so much in common. And again, it's something that I've said many times in the past. A lot of the differences are down to tactics, down to the way that things are phrased or posed, or down even to the way we work, you know, whether that's in unions or elsewhere in the community and so on. Those things can be overcome, and it doesn't really matter if you had a mass party. There could be all sorts of different methods and different ways that could be adopted, and you find out which is the best and so on, and you generalise from that. So we're participating in left unity, we're participating in the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition, and these are arguments that we have to engage with others. Those that want to water down their Marxism in order to accommodate people that are not socialist or not yet committed, as if that's the way that you win people. We win people by being patient, persuasive, open to other ideas, to engage with them, and we fight for our cause. And if we're successful at doing that, and if we're successful at getting involved in struggles and charting out a way forward, we'll persuade people. And if we don't, well, we just have to be patient. And if people want to join the Greens or adopt policies of reformism or less than our programme, then we can work with them. But it doesn't mean that we have to water down the programme or the policies of the party in order to get them to join. They will join on the basis of being persuaded, on the basis of events, of learning the lessons of the struggles that they go through, and so on. Now, in Tusk, because I'm going to have to come to the end, and I haven't got anywhere near covering all the issues that I wanted to, but in Tusk there's a debate about how it should be organised. First of all, I'd like to say that it's very important and an achievement that we've already got something like 74, 75 parliamentary candidates for the general election. So that's a significant step forward. I think we're going to get over 100, and it will be the biggest socialist parliamentary challenge since the, I don't know when, somebody else will probably have that statistic. So that's an achievement. But at some stage, if, as everybody in Tusk says, we need a new party, the question is, well, when are we going to debate that? How are we going to get to that? How are we going to make the transition from it being a federal coalition into being a party? Because in my opinion, it isn't democratic. It may be acceptable at the time, for the time being, that we have some sort of federal coalition in order that people have the time to get to know one another and so on. But you can't build a mass party if people can't join it. You can't build a mass membership if there's nothing to join. And people won't join something, for example, if the majority in the party thinks one thing, but a minority component thinks differently and has the power to veto. Or if a general secretary of a union thinks differently and has the power to veto. So, last point I want to throw out for discussion, and again, as I say, not covered all of the points, is the question of the role of the trade unions in a party. It's my point of view that actually we should not be looking to have a party that has a separate or separate component place for the trade unions. We should be arguing to recruit trade union members as individual members into the Socialist Party. The 6.5 members in trade unions, they're an absolutely key component of the working class, the advanced section, the militants in the trade unions and so on. But they're working class people who aren't in unions, who work in ununionised workplaces, who are in communities and so on. They need to have equal footing with people who are in the unions in a party. I've been told to sum up, and I've overstrayed my time, so I'm going to end on that and hopefully have time to come back and develop some more points at the end of the discussion. Thank you.
2 minutes.
All right, well, comrades, it's been a very interesting discussion and it's always fruitful. One of the things that I like about the Independent Socialist Network is that we have comradely, open discussion and disagreement, and we do it in a mature way. I always enjoy it, and I always come away thinking, new things. And I think that's the way, really, that the socialist movement has to conduct itself. It can't impose a position. You can't impose a line. You might actually be able, through discipline, to get somebody to do something that they don't actually agree with, but that doesn't really achieve very much that. What you want to do is to persuade. And so what we're trying to do is we're all socialists, we're all Marxists, is actually grapple with this difficult problem. How do we go from the situation where, at an international level, and particularly in Britain, the ideas of socialism have been pushed back? There's no question about that. If you go back to the 1970s or to the miners' strike of 1984-85 and compare the febrile atmosphere that existed then with the discussions about socialism and miners being recruited to socialist ideas and so on, and look at now, it's completely different. So we have been pushed back. And actually, in some ways, that's added to the fragmentation of the left. The defeat has added to the fragmentation of the left, just as the defeat of the English Revolution in the 17th century led to a fragmentation of the millenarian sects. All sorts of these weird and wonderful organisations of different religions, different religious ideas, was a product of defeat. But there are really good comrades in different organisations that we want to work with and discuss with and debate with and be in the same party with. Because some of these ideas, when we're trying to persuade people about socialism, and people are saying, well, can you provide an example? Well, we can look at historical examples and international examples of attempts by working class people to assert their own power, to act in their own interest. But what we don't have is a significant organisation that's doing this. We don't have a significant body of people. We're fragmented, we're fractured, we're divided. If instead of having 20 different papers, we had a paper to which all of the talented journalists wrote and contributed, and they might be contributing articles on the same issue and disagreeing with one another, goodness me, it would actually be an enjoyable paper that working class thinkers, people that want to change society, it might actually get them engaged. So, well, I don't agree with that, I do agree with that, but these are two people who are both Marxists and they're debating this out. There's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. Coming on to the question of language, I don't think the best socialists, the best Marxists, understand that, like in everything, to be honest, you use different language in different circumstances. I'm sure that when professors of physics at university get round the water cooler, they use different language talking to themselves about their subject than when they're teaching it in their university class, or when they're talking to first-year students at secondary school. And so some of the times the language that we use is understandable because we're talking amongst knowledgeable people, and other times you talk in language which is plain and simple and intelligible. And to be honest, if you're trying to persuade people about socialism and you can't do that, then you really need to think about it a lot harder. I hope that when I speak, I use simple, plain language. What is a revolutionary party? Well, what is a revolutionary party? Actually, most people in revolutionary party think of revolutionary party in a way that I don't. I believe a revolutionary... What is a Green Party? Why is it called... It's called the Green Party because it wants to look at the environment. Okay? A party is the bringing together of people with a shared approach. A revolutionary party is a party that has a programme for fundamental change. That's all it is, isn't it? A revolutionary party, revolutionary socialist party, is a party which brings together people that share the idea that there needs to be a societal change and it can't be done gradually. You can't change capitalism bit by bit into something that it isn't. You need a fundamental breach with capitalism. That means a revolutionary transformation, a revolutionary change. So for me, it's as simple as that. If you want to get rid of If you want to get rid of the profit system and you believe that that can only be done by a decisive act which inaugurates a new form of society, that's a revolutionary party. A lot of people who are in revolutionary parties think of it as something different. They think about it, the way that you organise, the way that you implement democratic centralism, for example. Or they see it as being the people who, unlike the unthinking multitude, understand that you should, with your small numbers, collectively run and smash your head against a brick wall repeatedly. That, for me, is not what we're about. We're about getting together the force in society that can bring about that change. So, working class people have all sorts of experience, and of course, constantly they're told that things will get better, you can achieve this, you can do that, don't worry about it. And so they don't want, perhaps, to come to the conclusion that we need to make this decisive rupture. Our job is to persuade them. Can it be done? Well, it's good in theory, but you'll never do it. So we have to persuade them. We have to make conscious, make the working class aware of its potential power. Go back to that, whether you call it the 1% and the 99%, or whether you look at the number of people that own companies, own the means of production, and everybody else in society, it's a completely disproportionate relationship. It shouldn't exist. If people really understood the power that they have, it wouldn't exist for longer than that, would it? But we have a job of persuading people that they have the capacity to do it. So we need a party of people that are capable of persuading. A party of proselytisers, if you like. People that go out and evangelise.
Sorry, evangelise.
You know, that's what we want people who go out and enthusiastically say, look, it can be done. You don't have to put up with this. You don't have to tolerate it. So, just moving on to some of the specific things. I think it was, I can't remember now, Pete McLaren raised, what will happen to the names of people that get in touch with Tusk through the election campaign? It's a very good question. I mean, my opinion is if they're going to continue with a federal approach, we should say, give those names to the Independent Socialist Network, we'll organise them. I don't know whether that would be agreed, but that's, that would be one way. But posing the question shows how ridiculous the existing state of affairs is. You can have a green surge. If the Greens didn't have a membership, the surge would just be a splurge. It would just go nowhere. So if you're going to have a campaign, you're going to have 100 parliamentary candidates, you're going to have an electoral broadcast on the television, hopefully some people will get in touch. It can't be that that goes to the SP where they're the candidate, or the SWP where they're the candidate. It's got to come to Tusk, and everybody in Tusk, brings those people into Tusk. There's another question, or another argument that I'll throw out there in terms of the question over democracy. Say we had an unexpected success and we did elect an MP. It's not going to happen this time round. But say we elected an MP. To whom is that MP going to be accountable?
Yeah.
Is it going to be accountable to Tusk or to the component part to which that person is a member? So these are important questions which we need to use in our discussion so far as the Trade Unionists and Socialist Coalition is concerned. Keep coming back to this question of a party. I believe, and I think there's any number of examples or facts that you could point to show this. Maybe it's an older layer, but there are tens of thousands of people out there who are socialists of some sort. They're not in things. They've been in things and they've maybe got tired or had families or had work. And we need to find a way of drawing those people back into a party, because we need to pass on the experience and the ideas to the newer generation. And we need to persuade the younger generation that their task is to build that party, to persuade working class people and people that support the idea of change that there is the power, there is the class in society that's capable of achieving that change. It's the working class. And that this system, if it continues, means despair and degradation and poverty and inequality and oppression, and that in and of itself is enough to fight for something different. We say that something different is socialism, and we've got to try and find a way of making that real.